The opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the participants and do not reflect the opinions or beliefs of Marshall University, Marshall University Libraries, the Department of English, the College of Liberal Arts, Marshall University Film Studies, or HerdCon. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of HerdCon's Book Chats. I am Cody Lumpkin, and with me, as always, is Marshall librarian Megan Sexton Harness. How are you doing, Megan?
I'm doing pretty good.
All right. Springtime, all that good stuff. So,
allergy season.
The allergy season, yes. It just gets worse every year. And today we have two special guests with us. And it's Leah Turley and Eliza Aulick. And to give a brief little intro we'll start with Leah. Leah Turley is an assistant professor of theater performance at Marshall University School of Theater and Dance. She's the creative artistic director for Appalachian Artists Collective and artistic director for Marshall University Theater, etc. Leah returned to West Virginia in 2012, which is when I moved here, after earning her master's degree in theater performance and joining Actors Equity. Leah is dedicated to producing engaging and imaginative theater that reflects the cultural and historic significance of West Virginia. Also, I'm a big fan of your productions, so I always I clear the schedule when it's time for one of your productions. So make sure.
Well, let me know next time. I'll have tickets waiting for you at the door. Sir.
Oh no, I'm happy to. I get the faculty discount. I want to support
Anytime
things.
you don't want to come on over.
Okay. And also we have Eliza. Eliza Aulick is a senior at Marshall University. She will graduate with her BFA in theater in May 2026. I was about to say 2016. That was a while ago. 2026. During her time at Marshall, she played Rebecca Hemmings in The Book of Will, Nora in A Doll's House, and Mary Ann in When We Were Young and Afraid. And most recently, she played Beatrice in Much Ado About Nothing, the William Shakespeare play. And also wanted to go ahead and thank beforehand. This will come out after you've graduated, but we do want to wish you the absolute best and congratulations
Thank you so much.
on graduating.
And what she has not put in her bio that we have to mention is that she has been accepted to the University of Central Florida for an MFA in theater performance. So very excited because I knew you weren't going to put that in your bio.
Yeah. Just adjust to the awful humidity of Florida.
I know the other day I was like, oh my gosh, it's so hot. And my mom was like, you don't even know what you're in for.
It'll be like 70 in the winter. It won't be that bad. Yeah. So today we're talking about one of those really like important books, formative books of West Virginia in the Telltale Lilac Bush and Other West Virginia Ghost Stories by Ruth Ann Musick. And just want to give a little bit of a bio for Ruth Ann Musick before we kick into high gear here and talk about various things related to this collection of ghost stories. Ruth Ann Musick was a Midwesterner born in Kirkville, Missouri. She earned a BS in education from Kirkville State College and an MS from the State University of Iowa. After teaching school, she earned a PhD in English from the State University of Iowa in 1943. While there, folklorist Edward Ford Piper first interested her in folklore. She's got quite an extensive biography. Music brought this interest to West Virginia. She came to teach mathematics and English, at Fairmont College, now Fairmont State University, in 1946, and remained until her retirement in 1967. She started a folklore literature class at the college and helped to revive the West Virginia Folklore Society. And in 1951, she founded the West Virginia Folklore Journal and served as editor until 1967. Music became West Virginia's folklore ambassador, promoting folklore through education, public speaking, radio, and television. She published 4 major folktale collections, just having a bad day, ballads, folktales, and folktales from West Virginia, The Telltale Lilac Bush, and Other West Virginia Ghost Stories, Green Hills of Magic, West Virginia Folktales from Europe, and Coffin Hollows and Other Ghost Tales. She wrote 2 popular folklore columns for West Virginia newspaper, The Old Folks Say and Sassafras Tea. Musick died in Fairmont. She bequeathed to Fairmont State her unpublished folklore estate, now archived in the West Virginia Folklife Center at the university. In 1980, the university library was named the Ruth Ann Music Library, which they didn't give it to some rich person. They gave it to a long-serving faculty
Yes.
member who created greatly to it. So, just to kick things off, what have been y'all's first encounters and experiences with the Telltale Lilac Bush? How did you find out about
It was
these?
a book that was in every single classroom I was in, like all of elementary school. And well, to give you some context, in the 4th grade, we read. You remember that book called "A Child Called It"? Right, there were no boundaries with what we were allowed to read, if that like kind of makes any sense, because the Telltale Lilac Bush has some moments in it that maybe I was ill prepared for in the 3rd grade, and was much scarier than I thought it would be. And our teacher was always like very serious about what one she would read to us, because I would watch her flip through and go, oh, not that one. And so that's what I remember. We had reading time where we would come back in from lunch and you could put your head on the desk and they would turn off the lights and the teacher would read to you for like an hour. And so it was awesome. I wish we still did it today. And that's what I remembered, was that part of it, and always seeing that orange book with the skeleton on it. So that was kind of how I was introduced to it. I had a teacher who read to us a lot, and that was the beginning of it.
Eliza, how about you? What did you?
I did not have the same experience. When we went to different elementary schools, when we toured this production, I did see the book in those elementary schools, but I had never encountered it before I auditioned for the show. And so, yeah, after I auditioned and got cast and we started talking about it, then I understood what this was about. So yeah, I was 19, I guess, before I had even heard of it.
Okay. In your experience.
I think for me, I definitely don't remember it being in my schools at all. But I was always a weird kid who always wanted to read ghost stories.
Yeah.
And I remember being at a bookstore and being like, ghosts in West Virginia, and having no idea who Ruth Ann Music was. So I think that's how I came to it. Just kind of found it at a bookstore and wanted to hear about ghosts.
I didn't grow up in West Virginia. I'm much like I'm from somewhere else. I grew up in Georgia, North Georgia, the very end of Appalachia, and there were other kind of books and things that we would have in the library that were local. But when I came here, and it was a couple of years, and just like I saw these books, and especially for whatever reason, the continuation of West Virginia Ghost Stories, Coffin Hollow. I just liked that title, and I was like, I got it. And we actually did a podcast a long time ago. One of our early ones, we did one on Coffin Hollow. So we did everything backwards. So this is the prequel episode to that, where hopefully we're a little better. We're more precise at podcasting now. And yeah, I just kind of dig kind of these like fairy tale folklore, these like primal lizard brain fears that these kind of stories get at, and just the simple idea of things that are in the folklore tradition and how they, because I think one thing to keep in mind when you look at the book itself is that it is merely a snapshot of the oral tradition. This is something that someone, and not to get too much in the weeds here, but this was like a lot of students of music's part of their assignments would be go and find a story for us and write it down and bring it back, and then we will build this collection of things, which apparently I'd heard from the Folk Life Center there that they have enough for, I don't know, 8 or 10 volumes of folklore. So there's so much, and they're still doing it. You can get a minor in folklore at Fairmont. And so they're still doing this kind of finding stories, and it is just a snapshot. This book cover is from the one from the 70s edition. It has not changed. It is still in print. University Press of Kentucky. So I guess WVU missed out on it. And it is just it's kind of an interesting snapshot, and interesting to see how various things in the oral tradition evolve. Now, one of the reasons we ask you all to come is that you were involved in a adaptation of some of the stories, and this was a stage production that the author A.E. Gill wrote, and I'll give her a little bio really quick. A.E. Gill has authored over 10 original plays, fiction, and award-winning children's poetry. She holds an MFA from Hollins University and a BA from English Literature. and a BS in education from Concord University. She grew up in Hinton, West Virginia, and currently lives in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And so she made what was the process? Did it was something like she decided to do it, or it was like, can you do this and we'll make a play out of it? Or what was the process?
Ash is the playwright for Appalachian Artists Collective. So when I started the company, the idea was majority female artists who are from or living in Appalachia are creating theater. So I'm artistic director. You know, it's just a ridiculous amount of women that I've trusted and worked with for a very long time. So Ash, at that point, had already written a Medea adaptation for me by Euripides, an Oedipus adaptation, an original show called Toad Wife. Oh my God, I'm missing another one. But we had worked together a lot. Her soon-to-be husband, Chris Clark, they're actually going to get married in Huntington. They're moving back home.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so we have plenty of things we can do. But her husband, Chris Clark, soon-to-be husband, Chris Clark, is an unbelievable artist, an unbelievable scenic designer. He has done tons of stuff for me. He originally did Toad Wife. We built a theater in the Clay Center, an exhibition at the Clay Center that was a small children's theater that was called Paper Theater. So we've worked together for a really long time. It all came about during COVID. If you were working in theater, you were very concerned during COVID. At that time, I wasn't even a full professor here. I was still adjunct. I was self-employed. So I was working at literally 6 different organizations. And one of those organizations was the Clay Center. Well, Zach Merritt and I worked together at the Clay Center. He's now in charge of education. And I said, there's something I want to do. I want it to be like Appalachian-y. And we were in my office, and on the bookshelf is the Telltale Lilac bush. And he goes, oh, you should do the Telltale Lilac bush. Ash can adapt it. And then just like left my office. And so like 2 weeks, I had come up with this idea that we would adapt the show. And so I literally emailed her and said, I want to do some adaptation of this. I like episodic stuff. She'd done some episodic stuff before. I said, just pick what you like, come back to me, and I'll make a play happen. And so she was like, fine. And so she literally did that. She picked her favorite stories. We have very similar aesthetics. So she knows what I like to see on stage. She has a really good job because she also works in children's literature. So she has a really good, like, clever brain about how you reveal things. And in theater, the revealing is the entire process, is we're constantly unraveling a story. And so she handled it really well. So that's kind of where it all started. And I was desperate, and I knew everyone else was desperate. So I found 6 other theater companies to buy into the project. I said, if you can bring $1,000 into the project, I will take the $7,000 that we all are buying in, and I will make a play for you. And they all said yes, somehow. I think it was just the desperation of COVID. And that's kind of how it all began. That very first production was split between 2 separate places. So we were going to do a production at Barboursville City Park and a production in Charleston at Festival. And then, and that was the first original, which included musical elements. So there's a lot of old-timey mountain Appalachian music that came with the first one that was written by Amanda Bridget and, oh my God, I can't remember his name, Ryan Kennedy. I got there. So there was original music with it. And our Charleston production during Festival got canceled because even though it was no longer COVID, right, it was like 2021 by this point, the entire cast got COVID. So I lost like $10,000 immediately. That money was down the drain to never be received again. And then we did it in Barboursville. And then when I finally became a full-time professor, that would have been your freshman year?
2022?
Yeah. So 2022, we were looking for something to take to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. And I was like, well, we're not going to go over there with Stuart Little, right? Like I'm not going to cross. I'm not going to be on a 6-hour international flight to produce someone else's play. So I said, let's produce our play. We got rid of the musical elements so that it would be easier for touring, because we were also touring here locally before we were doing the big tour over in Edinburgh. But that's kind of how it all came about, was me just having a very close playwright friend who knows what I like. I wanted to somehow make sure we didn't all starve to death in COVID, because I think in a matter of 2 weeks, all of the jobs I had lined up for like the next 9 months immediately canceled. So then we had to figure out what to do. So I kind of just poured all of our energy into this. Does that helpful? I know. I literally, anytime you want me to shut up, just say, girl, shut up.
It's all fascinating. Yeah. So you did the second version was one that you did in schools.
Yes. So we took it to schools. Yeah. So that's what Theater Etc. does.
Yeah.
Every year we rehearse in the fall, and then in the spring we go out on a tour every Friday. So we did the same thing with Telltale Lilac Bush in preparation for going to Scotland. So that by the time we went to Scotland, we had been doing literally a year, for an entire year. So it was very close to us. It wasn't difficult to figure out, okay, how do we pick it all back up? And we also knew every stupid scenic design piece that had to go into luggage. Like they all had air tags on. Like it was just, it was outrageous, for lack of a better term.
I'm curious about how there's obviously when you have a theater, you've got all these things that for better, however good or bad the theater is, you've got all, but what happened, you have to go to some other place and you have luggage. I mean, how much luggage do you have to make, we've got to be mindful that we only have so much luggage and only so many props.
So one of the benefits of Theater Etc. and one of the promises I think we make to our community is that theater can happen anywhere at any time, and I need very little things to do it. So when we went into schools, we had a projector that was a rear projector. It gave us most of any kind of the spectacle-driven things that we needed the audience to see. So we used a projector. We didn't use any lights because we were going to gymnasiums and cafeterias. It was like, turn on the lights. That's how we were going to get light. We don't mic them. We're not going to put you in a microphone for a straight play. Half of the job is if you can't speak loud enough for people to hear you, should probably get out of this. So really it's about what is essential and what can we reimagine so that we can figure out how to take it with us. So Jimmy Lee Lawson, who was our scenic designer, very talented, right now getting his MA in design technology at OU. But he came to me and he said, I think I know how we do this. And so our pole and drape had to fold down into, I had to buy an entirely new pole and drape so that it folds down into itself. We had foam rocks, and I mean smushable foam rocks instead of a hardcore foam rock. We had a campfire that was just a bunch of sticks around one of those fire lights. You have to reimagine it, and then it's really the job of the actors to sell it. Because as an audience, you will believe what we are buying if we believe it. And so half of the difficulty is, how do we shove everything in people's cars? When we went over to Scotland, it was what are we allowed to take? What you will know is that you can bring a body bag. That is what they say. That's what they tell you. You can bring a body bag and put anything you want in it. And so we had to literally check this carryable. It was preposterous and had all these little pockets in it. It was outrageous. But we were allowed to take that, and we did have to open it. We had majorette, those wooden majorette guns. So we had 2 of those, and we had to check those first to make sure that they would know they're not actual weapons because they show up very, very odd shape through the extra. Yeah. And I had to be no, please check them. They are just wood. But yeah, stuff like that. How do you reimagine it? How do you make it palatable for an audience? And if the actors are good enough and we've given you all of the other doodads, like a projection screen and atmospheric noise, you'll believe us. And so we had great audiences. We had great schools that we went to the whole time. I mean, some people are always a little scared, will the kids be scared? And I'm always they'll be fine. It's all fake. They'll be fine.
I mean, the stories, they weren't the scariest story.
Not at all.
There wasn't a lot of dismemberment. That's my kind of I like representations of violence, not actual violence. I love all the horrible stories.
Well, I mean, there's a reason why all of those Grimm's fairy tales were written in the way that they were, right? They were supposed to be warnings.
Yeah.
They were supposed to be scary. And this idea now that we have to cater to children in a way that they're never scared, they're never angry, they're never sad. I grew up with Old Yeller and Bambi. I was devastated my whole life. They'll be fine.
And, some of these stories are actually even really heartwarming. There was one, I can't remember the title of it, but the first husband died.
Yeah.
And then his ghost saves the second husband from death.
Yeah.
And, even though I saw where it was going, I still got a little choked up.
Yes.
That then the second husband would always deliver flowers to I was what good men.
Yes.
What good babies.
Well, and the horse, I think of the horse one all the time because, I mean, the majority of the one, the skeleton hand is funny, right? Some of them are funny and ridiculous. But, the horse one, he brings this man to safety. Like these ghosts and these people of the past made sure this coal miner found a way out. Like there are some of these beautiful representations of the afterlife. And so, with the good comes the bad. With a dismemberment comes a horse that saves us.
I do think just in general about the collection, and I have to say this is an immaculately organized collection. And maybe talk about the sequel or the continuation has huge problems, I think, because Ruth Ann Music died. But it is just really well ordered. And if you're reading this book, there's always it's scholarly and it's entertaining.
Yes.
They have these things called all these you look at the end, it's like what are all these numbers here? And let me make sure I get this one right. It is sorry here. There's two collections, motif indexes, types and motif indexes, folklores of England and North America by Ernest Bauman, and then Steve Thompson's motif index of folk literature. These came out in the 60s and the 50s, and they're just whole books of lists of things like woman feels cold hands of death, or dog sounds sad, or just every possible thing in these stories that had this kind of collective unconsciousness that this is something that's happened, as has continued to happen, and has some sort of resonance. And so I think these are stories that they feel, a lot of the stories have these kind of out of time feel. I do like the nice ones, but then also one of the things I thought reading through the whole thing as a whole is just like, yeah, I understand why women pick the bear. With some of these guys, so much murder going on it's just overwhelming.
Well, and there's so much blaming of women too, right?
Yeah.
Like that becomes. I mean, nothing has changed. I tell people all the time the reason I like Greek theater and Shakespeare is that it just reminds us that we've been horrific since the dawn of time. We're no better. We just added more doodads to stuff. But the women are always paying the price in each one of these. And Rose Run is actually outside of a lot of those in that she gets revenge for what happens to her.
I was, if we you want to just go ahead and talk about the individual stories. So
sure.
These are some of the ones that were adapted, that were part of A.E. Gill's adaptation. And I guess I can start, and then we can go to everybody else, because it's the title one, the Telltale Lilac Bush. And one of the things I thought about that one was, again, guys are terrible. But yeah, this story about this poor isolated woman, and this dude husband murders her, and then he has gay parties afterwards, which I don't know what exactly that means, but he's having party. He feels like he could not have parties when his wife was there. I was like, why don't you have parties with your wife and have fun? But he doesn't. I don't know. He's like, there's a bunch of guys there. I don't know what's being implied. Nothing wrong with it, but you could have just divorced the wife, or left, or whatever. People did that all the time. They just left. And I think it's weird because he murders her, and there's a lot of, and you see this pattern of like people murdering somebody, and then they're gonna bury them really near where they're like, I'm gonna bury him below the house or right outside the house. And so you have this vegetative revenge of the lilac bush, and just some dudes are like at the party, and then the bush is literally knocking on the window, which I think is great. That it's this kind of, I don't know if it, not to say that women have a soft revenge or something like that. Nothing like that, but it feels like there's just this quiet, persistent determination of this spirit to find out that I'm dead, and y'all come rescue. Y'all come, vengeance is mine, kind of thing. So I don't know. Was that one? I was going to wonder, like, why is the book titled it? It's such a very short story too. So, what's your all's thoughts on where that one was? Right?
I mean, I like the title. I think it's pretty.
Yeah. it makes the whole collection sound lovely.
And I think it also really speaks to the perseverance and determination of the people of the area. That even when we're 20 feet under the ground, buried in coal, you're going to hear us, that we are going to be acknowledged. And so I like to think that is why, that it's a good representation of our people.
Well, and the Telltale Heart, like, right? Like, as soon as you hear, it
Yeah.
sounds like the most Appalachian thing you've ever heard, right? That somebody somewhere heard of the Telltale Lilac or the Telltale Heart, came home and was like, "What's Telltale, what?" Right? And they decided to make it something else, right? That they heard one thing, and it suddenly now turns into some kind of Appalachian folktale because it's exactly the same. I mean, it follows almost to the T exactly
Yeah.
what's happening in the
About
Telltale, but it's from an Appalachian perspective. I mean, I think something that we're really good about historically is taking something that was very mainstream for other people and kind of refining it and making it for ourselves. I mean, when you get down to like old-timey mountain music and you're talking about bluegrass, we're talking about what ended up being hymns, right? Or spirituals that almost, not the religion wasn't taken out, but they were like, wouldn't it be cool if we played this faster and a little louder and a little twangier?
Yeah.
And suddenly we took things that I think maybe weren't as interesting and tried to make them interesting for ourselves, considering how difficult it is for information to get here, how difficult it is for other people to get here, especially, I mean, when we're talking about the kind of key time period of populating West Virginia, it was hard to get here. Those kinds of aspects of what we take, and once you bring something back, you had to share it with everyone because not all of us got to go somewhere, or not all of us came from somewhere else. So I like that aspect because it just feels like Appalachian thievery.
Yeah.
And I'm also happy to be like an Appalachian thief. I don't care.
I remember it was there was in the 80s, Dolly Parton hosted Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
And there's a little skit where they're like, Dolly, tell us a mountain story. And she's basically like telling the plot of like the Brady Bunch and Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie. And they're like, oh, that's it. Which actually that is something that is accounted for in folklore studies, is that things come into like mainstream or print culture and then they go into an oral tradition. And so it's something, this kind of thing coming back and forth constantly. I hadn't really thought about the Telltale Lilac Bush being the tell. Yeah, it's like, oh, that's the exact same story.
One of my favorite lines in the play, the way that the play was structured was one of the characters would step up and say, "This is the name of the story that I'm going to tell." And she said, "The Telltale Lilac Bush." And another character said,
"What?
Don't you mean the Telltale Heart?" And Nikki said, "What kind of blameful name is that? Telltale Lilac Bush." And there was a point about, I think the soldier had a line about, we don't have those high school books, or no, it was the miner, wasn't it?
And haven't made it, yeah.
Didn't make it past, didn't make it up through high school.
And that the books hadn't made it up to them yet.
Yes.
Right. And so kind of the other part of that is that if not everyone had the ability to read and write as easily, and that if your basis for reading and writing is the King James Bible, which was the majority of how people were learning how to read and write, these become like an entirely new world. First of all, they're more easy to understand. It's from an oral tradition, so you don't have to worry about the kind of the reading of it. And it's not in that almost iambic or verse, so that these were so much more palatable, especially if you're spending all of your time trying to read through the Bible as a first-time reader. I could just imagine how frustrating that would be. And then you would hear these oral and you'd be like, okay, I can take a break, not knowing that these also are types of morality tales. No different than kind of what we're reading in the King James Bible.
I will say that's one of the things that I really thought adapted well in this book, at least. Was that each story, I could feel the voice behind it. It didn't feel like one person was writing this whole book, whether they used specific names in some, or they described distance or places in the way that I would have described growing up in my hometown. But their voices were also so very different. Like, it was very clear that they had taken great pains to write this as the person spoke. And I thought that did great on the page.
Yeah. Well, there's such a strange collectivism that you're kind of talking about that I think if you're from Appalachia and you've been here for a while, right, or if you're a transplant, you start to realize we all kind of have these remarkably common experiences. Like the second I said King James Bible, you were like, yeah. We started, I always wondered why my grandmother could always understand the Shakespeare shows, right? But she would have a hard time with like an Aaron Sorkin play or a Mamet play. But she always understood every single word we said and she would be like, yeah, you were talking about this. And my mother was like, what are you talking about? I think about those kind of collective ideas that even though it does feel like different people speaking, it feels like all of them are from the same place, which is remarkably difficult to create in such a large volume of stories.
Yeah. And I think there's clearly a certain tonal consistency that music not as the author, but as the compiler, the editor, and there's that editorial oversight where you feel that. But then, yeah, there's some things that like some of these stories like are very vivid and very, very imagistic openings, and then they kind of just and we never saw them again or something like that. So they have these kind of a lot of these stories are unwieldy in a very like these are not professional stories, and that's what makes it fun. They're a little messy.
See, I liked their sudden endings and they just leave things unexplained. They're like, that's just the way it is. And I'm like, wasn't the world a little more fun when we didn't have all the answers? Like, wasn't it a little more fun when we could be like, yeah, that was a ghost. It's fine. It's fine.
DNA evidence showed that this was the actual guy or something like that.
Yeah. Or we know what happened to the Roanoke colony now.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to know.
Or it's also like, I also feel like it's kind of like that West Virginia fatalism, right? That you're like, well, and it happened and there's nothing to do about it. At least we're not dead. That feels like a lot of this, that they're not like, and we never saw him again. It was a very sad story. It was like, nope, we just never saw him again. We're moving on. Yeah. We can't hold on to any of that stuff anyway, right? Like there's so much, if you think about how hard it is to live, especially at that time, or to live in Appalachia today can be remarkably difficult. That becomes like almost a reflection of it, I guess.
You'd kind of wanted to highlight Rose Run, which there's the vegetative revenge. But what were some of your thoughts about? This was the one that you wanted to talk about.
About Rose Run. Well, I like a revenge story very much. It was my favorite one to direct because I directed it twice, and that was one of the stories that didn't change almost at all because it worked so well for us. The staging of it was very similar across both. But what I got I'm a movement director. So I spend a lot of my time working with actors on their movement. Where's your posture? Where's your body, your breath, your voice? If I'm watching you on stage, what are you trying to communicate with your body? And Rose Run had all of these issues in it, right? Like a girl gets shot on stage in real time. I can't shoot a girl. Can't do that. I am not going to be able to like throw her in the air. And then apparently, that's exactly what I did is we literally shot and actors stood behind her and she went up in a lift that looks like it's slow motion in the time. And we kind of flipped her all the way over to murder her. And then the other hard part was how was she going to murder her dad? Because if you don't know the story Rose Run, essentially this young, beautiful girl named Rose falls in love with some common boy who does not own any land.
A city boy.
Yeah, remember, it's a very big problem if you don't own any land. He doesn't own any land, and she falls in love with him. And, of course, the dad is very upset about it. And as you would obviously do if you were upset with your child, decides that he's going to shoot and murder her lover. So he goes to the dance. There they are. They're about to embrace. And the father says, get away from her. And Rose tries to stand. Well, she does. She stands in front of him. And she is the one who is shot and murdered. And she is buried out in a rose field. And her boyfriend is hung. Yeah. We also did that.
So probably lynched.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
So that's what happened. That's what happens to him. And she gets her ultimate revenge. Her father's like sobbing over her grave, which is such a lie. You killed her. What are you upset about? Yeah. And the child, Rose, with all of these vines, reaches up, and what we did in our production was use a vine of roses, and she killed him. Like she chokes him out, pulls him back, and he falls and dies. And I'm just a real big vengeance person.
Yeah.
It says a lot about me. Everyone watch out.
It was definitely one of the most good for her kind of There's a lot of good for that ghost, but that was definitely a good for her ghost
That
story.
was the scariest one for kiddos to see.
I remember watching it happen in front of kids and thinking, oh my gosh, I hope they aren't horrified. But it was really, it was one of those like, this is not real because he would get choked out. And then I think he had the next line. Yes. He just sat right up and he was like, well, that was a good one.
Yeah. And I would say to them, that's part of it is that we have to just let them see it. We are often deciding what the reaction of children should be before we're letting them have that reaction. We're just so worried they're going to get scared. And it worked beautifully because then that ended up being like their favorite one of the entire thing. They loved that scene. They all wanted to get their picture taken with Nikki, who played Rose. It ended up being so amazing. And it's because the violence wasn't real. And also in theater, we remind everyone all the time, like, none of this you can feel however you want about these people. Every night, whenever the lights go down, they die. And every day when the lights come up, they're resurrected.
They all take a bow at the end.
Yeah, and
They've all come back.
Yeah, it's over.
They're just actors.
Yes.
Something made me think of like I was reminding in Appalachia where you have like bushes and shrubs. They're referred to as hells. It's usually in mountainous areas. So it literally this daughter makes a hell on earth of this property, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm glad it's choked with roses.
Oh, and the projection really was cool too because it ended up being like all of these thorny things that continued to rise. So as Nikki was murdering him, these thorns were coming up behind her on that rear projection screen. I mean, it was gorgeous. So that was also I liked the visual aspect of it. Also, she read books. That was a big part of what was very different about Rose is she was, first of all, literate. Second of all, she was very open about like, I just need a book. I don't need a man. So she wasn't even looking for a dude. And she becomes kind of this like, in that character specifically known as the Maiden in our production, where they each were kind of given a designation. She becomes like the feminist icon of the play, for lack of a better term. We are constantly looking to her. She's the one who solves most of the problems. She's the one who becomes the leader. And we watch the male characters kind of have to fall back behind her. And the only other character who can like step up to her is Eliza's character, which is the granny character. So the men don't really try her too much because they know better. And that story helps to reinforce that characterization. Yeah.
You also did, Megan. You wanted to talk a little bit about the old horse.
Yes, funny enough, I am not normally a fairy tales person, even though I have taken multiple classes on fairy tales. Like I said, I like them to be a little darker than that, preferably. But there was just something about the old horse. Cody in his notes did say that he brought up the abuse of these animals, but in this story, that isn't the focus. There are stories in this collection where the focus was the abuse of the animals. I absolutely hated the canary. I wanted the guy to like get his eyes poked out by a ghost canary or something. Taking care of two canaries was not enough for me.
He gets a redemption story. It makes me really mad.
Yeah, and it's not a good redemption story either.
Like in my notes, I highlighted it and I was like, WTF?
Yeah.
Like, what is this? I was so mad. But in the old horse, we see this absolutely differently. This animal that we think of as being a a labor-intensive, abused animal is the most well taken care of creature, and maybe in this entire book.
Yeah.
Even once he's retired, the man still goes. And then for that horse to save him later. I just thought that was an absolute beautiful story about, like, what you give into the world, you will get back.
Yeah.
Like,
well, and this was also switched. So this was in the original one that we did in Charleston. Well, in Charleston, we never got to do it. Yeah. And in Barbersville, we included the old horse. And then in the one that we took to Edinburgh, because, when you work with a playwright, they always have changes. Ash was like, hey, I have a better story for the ending. And so we ended up switching it for the ghost miners who helped the guy out. But it's the same, it's of the same ilk of story. It's almost exactly, it's just a difference in which ghost is going to help you. But in the Barbersville production, we had a horse. Not a real horse. We're not crazy people. No. First, that's good. That's exactly how you should react. Yeah. Oh, God. But it was a huge puppet. It was from
cool.
Two of my scenic designers built it, and it was gorgeous, life size. It moved. Its head moved. It had red eye. It was a pain, as you know. I don't know if you've ever worked with a puppet. They're the devil until they're not. So we used a horse in that, and that Ash and I talked about this very thing. That I was very interested. I was concerned, is the way I would probably say it. I was concerned when she said she wanted to include the old horse because I couldn't remember which one it was. And I thought she was talking about some kind of like abused animal thing. And I was like, listen, I am an evil, hateful woman, but I cannot abide by the abuse of animals. And so when she showed me which one it was, I was like, oh, okay, no, never mind. That's beautiful. Let's do that all day.
I'm not gonna lie, I almost skipped the animal section except that one because they were just getting so hard to read.
I can't do it.
Yeah, it made me think also the things that were taking place in mines, and it's something that music talks about in her introductions. Is we don't really get any. There's one story called Shiny Eyes where this creature shows up at the mouth of a mine. Yeah. And it always portends someone's going to die in the mine. And at some point, I'm just like, Maybe it's not the mutant creature that should. Maybe
Mhm.
it's the mine safety that we
Yeah.
should be mindful of, or that there's never. I don't know. It's folktale, so there's never like let's start a union here, or let's get a mine inspector in, or let's maybe be a little more cautious about how we extract from the earth.
See,
But
I felt like Shiny Eyes could be a sibling or a cousin of Mothman, where people
That's what
either
I-
blame
Oh.
or is it warning you?
No, no, no.
Like,
Word. That's interesting. Oh.
and they got the two guys, brothers, who they gave the whiskey to first before completing the job, and they get drunk. And even though they competently shoot the horse of the mutant creature, it does nothing. So it kind of shows up, and it is that kind of harbinger cryptid.
I like to think that after that last time when it never showed up again, we know mine accidents kept happening.
Yeah.
So now you just don't got a warning because you were
Yeah.
in.
Yes. Well, and I wonder, like, to what extent were these stories meant to, for all of the things that the company was going to tell you, right?
Mhm.
We're going to make you rich. We are fueling America. You hear it today.
Yeah, we build.
We're fueling America.
Coal keeps the lights
Yeah,
on.
coal keeps the lights on. You're hearing all of that kind of stuff. And I wonder if, to a certain extent, some of these ghost stories weren't either created or heard. You know, I also want to know how many of the ghost stories were oral tradition and someone was like, I have an idea. I'm just going to tell everybody my
Yeah.
story. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's
Yeah.
just original. But I wonder how this was like a warning sign, right? Like, this is what you could get into,
Mhm.
right? So that these other people are going to tell you, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened to you. We have brought new vigor to Appalachia. You idiot hillbillies now have something of your own. And that, you know, I could imagine my grandmother being like, yeah, well, let's tell them that in the mine, if you go down there, they're going to rip your eyeballs out, right?
Mhm.
Then you would be less likely to maybe take that leap. So that it's something I think often about when we talk about the coal mine stories, that I wonder to what extent were they warnings for the young men who at 14 or 13 or 12 or 10
Yeah.
were going to go into the mines.
It's a strange thing because there's so many like don't go in like
Mm.
so much in literature like you don't want to have this job, but it's the people particularly in certain communities they feel like that's the job they want.
Mm.
That's the job that would pay them the most money, and they get to be, you know. And I think there seems to be this some sort of people who work in mine. There's this brotherhood and sisterhood when there are
Yeah.
women miners, that it's like you go down there and you just have to worry about not dying. That's the main thing, and that you don't have to worry about anything. So I think there is this kind of brutal simplicity of having a job like that as long as you come home, that's what matters.
Yeah, my dad worked in the mines from the time I was 18 until I was 25 or 26. He was there long. I mean, night shift, 12 hours
Yeah.
every single time, 6 days a week. And, I mean, it sounds, it's good money. There's no
Yeah.
lying about it, but that's part of what they know they're doing, that if they offer a bunch of dudes in Appalachia enough money, they'll do anything.
Mhm.
And if a bunch of guys in suits who have dialects where you don't sound like this, we always think people who don't have a dialect are smarter than us.
Mhm.
If a bunch of them came in and said, "This is your ticket, pal,"
Mhm.
how many times would we say yes? Because, and also it's about how much we devalue ourselves.
Mhm.
Always, if you name a huge corporation anywhere in West Virginia, they will die before they hire as their CEO a West Virginian. It
Mhm.
will always be someone from somewhere else. It lasts till today. How we view ourselves has made our lives more difficult. That shows up in her book 1 billion times, and it still shows up now. I mean,
It even shows up in the way we vote
100%.
as a state.
100%.
That we would rather someone from outside of our
Yes.
state
Yeah.
control us. or be-
100%.
I'd heard it was this kind of sense that you, on a certain level, West Virginia wanted someone that, at least on the federal level, wouldn't want someone that would embarrass them. That may have changed recently, but you have somebody, politicians that aren't, they don't necessarily, I don't know, like, what's it, Rockefeller, who came in.
Yeah.
And I think it was someone who did a lot of good for the state. But he was an outsider
Mhm.
and kind of came in. Of course, there are plenty of insiders that have also done horrible
Yeah.
things to the state as well. I do also, there's a little thing I know just looking at where all these stories come from, and it is just a geographical thing,
Mm-hmm.
is that these stories tend to be more northern West Virginia, at
Yeah.
least the origins, because, who was going to Fairmont State then and now? it's going to be more people in that region. Not that I don't think Fairmont is a wonderful university.
Yeah.
I worked there a summer at GHA. I love the people there. It's great. It's a very nice campus. It's hilly. It's like the nice Marshall, but very hilly kind of. It's got that vibe. It's a great place. But yeah, there's a lot. I mean, it's just the resources not to go out and find these stories. They just have to. The stories have to come to them to make them. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe some more representation for Southern West Virginia ghost stories.
Well, I always call the North like fake West Virginia.
No.
I was gonna say, okay, I'm
Fake
from
WV.
Northern. My family's all from Huntington, but I grew up in Wheeling, and it's a different feel. I love got that Wheeling feeling every time I go back, and if you haven't been, you should go. But it is. I moved down here, and I was like, it's just a different. It's a different level,
world.
yeah.
Like, and I think about specifically near Maryland, near PA.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those people would die before they would admit that they were West Virginian.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? They're like, oh, well, I live on the border of Pennsylvania. It was like, right. Where, though?
Me and my best friend Nicole Morgantown want to be Pennsylvania.
It is. And I mean, please get your money up there. I'm not gonna hurt you down here, please. But the idea that we share that kind of cultural stuff, for lack of a better term, is just not true. I mean, you know, Eliza and I, we very much are on the same page artistically. We grew up completely differently. And I don't know that that's just necessarily her being up north and me being like from on top of a mountain, right, near Boone County. But I noticed that a lot with when we have Northern students and when I'm kind of talking about what Appalachian tradition is and I'm thinking that we have some commonality, we often don't because a lot of their experiences are just so vastly different than mine. It's an interesting, weird divide in the state.
They use stick pepperoni and pepperoni rolls.
Right,
and
that's
that
not
is just
even a thing. Like,
unforgivable.
what are you even talking about?
Unforgivable.
I was thinking the storyteller Adam Booth from West Virginia.
We love Adam
Oh,
Booth.
good, yeah. He gave a keynote in 2014 at Appalachian Studies, and one of the things I was really struck by was he grew up in places like Charleston and he said basically he felt growing up as an Appalachian, the most Appalachian thing he did at the time was like, oh, we went to Tudor's Biscuit World, and that particular era of like assimilation that was going on that happened probably in the 70s and the 80s and then the 90s. I feel like that was when Appalachian Studies programs and just that need of like, let's not forget. Let's don't try to modernize and be like everybody else. There's still stuff worth remembering, and just going through that kind of like lose your accent as soon as possible.
Oh, I mean, as an actor, that was like the first thing.
Yeah.
That I mean, I can still get, you know what I mean? You get mad enough or whatever, I can pop into it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But that was like the first thing that happened. And a lot of other Appalachians, you might feel similarly, that I always felt I was because I'm in theater, I was too fancy for Appalachia, right? Like, so I was too fancy in the holler and on the hills, but I wasn't fancy enough for the like upper echelon. So I always felt like this has been my entire career, has been feeling like I'm not enough of each one. And that is, I know that often people in academia feel this way. People who, you know, people view theater as hoity-toity, which is hilarious because we're all just a bunch of degenerates.
Yes. Sure. I'm aware of this.
Right, literally just a bunch of degenerates.
Yeah.
So I was actually born in Logan. And then I did a lot of my formative years in a suburb of Dallas, Texas.
There you go.
And then I moved back to Logan.
Yeah.
So I definitely know how you feel like the clothes that made me fit in Texas made me a weirdo in Logan.
Yeah.
And it was that, but I also wasn't like a coal foreman's daughter. Like, so I still didn't fit in with either of anyone.
Well, and I learned how to code switch very well.
Yes.
Right, you learn it very quickly. I learned very quickly if I had to stop for directions in Boone County, this dialect was going to get me 0% anywhere. But if I went in and said, oh my God, y'all, I don't know where I am at all. And they'd be like, oh, girl, here you, and they would help me in 2 seconds. But I was like, hi, excuse me, I don't know where I am. And they would be like, well, then get out. Yeah. That was a part of, so that code switching then went into my professional life, right? Like, I knew that if I was in New York, if I said y'all, that would be the first mark against me, right? If I behaved in a way that for 2 seconds seemed like I, you know, was maybe not the most upper crust lady, that there would be repercussions for that. And then, you know, you come back to West Virginia and I got so much further by saying, oh my God, hi, how are you? And all of those kinds of things became a part of the Appalachian world, I guess.
Yeah. even in Logan, it hasn't happened in a long time because I
Yeah.
tried not to go back to Logan.
Sure.
But people being like, "Where are you from? You don't
Uh-huh.
sound like us." And I'm like, "I'm literally here. I graduated from Logan High
Yeah.
School. Like,
You're like, I am you.
I don't understand."
Yeah.
Sorry, I took you on an Appalachian song. I'm so sorry.
I just think it's important to accept people as they are. I know I'm quaint and naive.
No. It's so helpful, but I think that's part of to deny that part of my career. The reason I chose to stay in Appalachia, the reason I came back, right, was that there were so few people like me. The same people who were doing theater when I was 10 years old in Charleston were the same people doing theater when I came back with my MFA and my equity card. And everywhere else I would go and be like, these kids aren't any better. These people aren't any better actors. They don't have any, what they have is access and money. I'll make my own access and we'll figure out the money part later because I'm a theater person. But I mean, that shaped so much of how I was going to become an artist and then also why I chose stuff like this. I mean, we chose much harder stuff, you know, getting the performance rights to this. It was like a 4-month process and just figuring out who owned the rights to the book was a 2-month process. And even calling UK and they're like, girl, we don't know. I called them back again. I said, no, but you have to know. The other people don't know. And they said, we don't know. So I just went back and forth until someone was finally like, you can do the play. And I was like, that's all I needed to hear. But I mean, it plays into why even do this? No one else had before. So that's why.
So getting back to the stories, I think we're really one of the most fascinating ones. And Eliza, we'll just talk a little about Seven Bones, and also I just have a question first to kick off with. What's it like? So you're a young person, and
Thank
you
you.
played an old person. Do you feel flattered or insulted? You should play the old person in our play.
I got cast as a character called Granny twice in 2 years, and I was like, what does that say about how I move? Yeah, it's an interesting experience. I think on stage especially, I read quite young in other roles, so it's definitely a challenge, but there was a lot of dialect work because she's from Czechoslovakia. And so that was kind of my in. You know, you think of older people having an older voice. That's kind of one of the first things you start to work on. And so just in the dialect, that kind of helped me, I don't know, create that old voice feel. But they also gave me this shawl and this cane. And if you put a shawl on with a cane, you just move differently. I spent a lot of time trying to move slower. Leah's always on about, you know, quick feet on stage, and it's like,
feet on stage.
do you go slow because you're old, or do you do quick feet?
Right.
Because anyway, yeah, it's definitely a challenge, but it was a fun one.
So what are your thoughts and reflections about Seven Bones? And I mean, it's wow.
I just love it so much. I have so many fond memories of this show. I was really going down memory lane the other day about all of this. Yeah, it was. You know, I love it. It was.
Do you want to talk about the staging, maybe? Because that was the actual Seven Bones part is actually remarkably interesting in terms of how we staged it.
Yes. Yeah. So we, the setup was that we were all sitting around a campfire, and then we would stand up to tell our story. And so I got up to tell Seven Bones, and Nikki, who played the maiden, was the character. So I was narrating the whole time, but I played the. Not fortune teller,
But it's kind of a fortune teller,
Yeah.
a soothsayer for like she has a crystal ball.
Yes, and they gave me this light up orb, and they were like, "Do some magic with it." Second time I did magic in a
Yes.
orb. Anyway, so yeah, Nikki would. We had a couple of bushes on stage, so I said, "Go get these bones and stir them and wait." And so she would go back behind these bushes and pick up these different props, and the kids would be like, "Oh my gosh, there's stuff behind the bushes. How do you like get this?" And so then I think the projection would come up, and it would be the horse, and she would leave with the old. So the story is she's in love with this man, and he goes off to war and comes back as a ghost on a horse, and she knows that the horse is evil, like it's a bad spirit.
Yeah, it's a bad spirit.
And goes with him, and eventually is able to escape due to the chickens. And we had this beautiful chicken puppet, and I'm still like, I wish that I got to take it home with me. But yeah, it was just such a fun way to to do ghost. I had never done a ghost story before, and I'm very creeped out by anything horror. So like just a show in general, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't. I'm so scared of anything. But yeah, it was just a fun way to block it and get to tell that story.
Well, and one of the things the reason projections are so helpful is they can solve the issue of a girl gets on a horse and rides through the moonlight. And so that was a literal animation. So we tried to keep them almost primitive-esque so that we weren't trying to create a very realistic horse with a very realistic woman and ghost on it. Instead, they were almost like you were watching the sketch come together. So that was stylistically, I think, really smart, so that we also weren't asking the audience to believe that this is what it really looks like. How we presented it was, again, how they took it. I love Seven Bones. Do you know anything about? I know we talked a little bit about the Czechoslovakian stuff.
Yeah, I don't know as much as I wish I did, but I think a lot of there was a lot of immigration from Czechoslovakia. I think it was similar climate, or similar place. I think you know
it's
more
similar
about
to
it
the
than
Scottish stuff. I mean, like, right? What is the reason why so many Scottish people ended up in Appalachia? It was the exact same climate. They could propagate crops. There were all of these things that they could do that they couldn't have done in any other climates. Well, the same was true for Czechoslovakia. We share a lot of the same kind of herbal medicine in Appalachia that they have in like old world Czechoslovakia. It was also very difficult for Eliza to learn what is essentially a dead dialect. Czechoslovakia, of course, is no longer a country. It is now the Czech Republic and Slovakia. When that split happened, that changed very much between Slovakia and the Czech Republic. That is now a dead dialect. It's not something that's even carried contemporarily anymore because the dialects change so separately. So she was learning stuff based upon something that no longer existed. So we were just listening to other people's interpretations of Czechoslovakian because there was not a huge auditory way for us to listen to a woman who is Czechoslovakian.
I ended up
at the turn of the
sounding
century.
like Gru from Despicable Me, so
I think it worked beautifully.
I thought it was fine.
It was fun.
That particular story, it seems like a lot of work. Like the Seven Bones from Seven Graves and Boilem 7 Nights. That's one of the more specific ones.
Yeah.
And it does, and I think reading over in the play, there's a lot of call and response. It's like, make sure and do this, do that, and it does the adaptation does a nice job of making it, I guess, more action oriented, even though it's just a paragraph or two near the end where there's all this give and take. So
well, and Ash specifically chose kind of what she thought would be the most active. So I said, I know I want there to be. I've done these kind of episodic things before. We were talking before that I had done like 4 episodes of The Twilight Zone. We had done 3 scene selections from Tennessee Williams, 3 scene selections from Eugene O'Neill. So I kind of liked this episodic nature. I knew I didn't want it to be like large narrations, that if we were having narrations, they needed to be involved in the action. And so that was one of her tasks, was how do I find a story that Leah can do something with? Because there are so many of these you can do nothing with in terms of, like I can make people float, or they say things like, and then she disappeared. It's like, well, this is theater. I can't just disappear someone. So she did a really good job of finding something that was very active. I love Seven Bones. I think it's one of the more interesting because they play jokes, right? We'll give you something very devastating like Rose Run, and then we'll follow it up with Seven Bones so that you get like a little fun in your life.
For me, I'm like, girl, aren't you just relieved you knew he was bad now?
No kidding.
I ended up married to that man.
Just run, honey.
yeah.
Shouldn't have gotten on that horse.
So what are I guess some of your overall thoughts and reflections about the collection, your experience working with the adaptation, just any overall.
Anything weird? I mean, like, I know you've never done anything like this, so like, I've done a bunch of this episodic stuff. So I'm wondering, and also you had such a long.
Yeah.
That's probably the longest run of a show you've ever done.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Maybe that's something interesting for you.
Yeah, I mean, well, the most interesting part, and it's not about the script. I mean, the script, but we traveled the show to Edinburgh, and really, I think it was the first play I did, yes, that was based in West Virginia about people from West Virginia, and so accurately about West Virginia. I'm like, I 100th generation West Virginian, like we go way back, and really how beautiful it is to get to tell stories from where you're from. And like when I was a kid, I got to see some theater, but it was never stories about people like me.
Yeah.
And so how awesome is it that we got to take that to Scotland and say this is what West Virginia really is, because it gets a bad rap often. But it's really so beautiful. And yes, there are ghost stories and people are like the Appalachian Hills and mountains are so haunted, but really it's all about good juju, and if you are good, you'll get good. I think that was really emphasized in the as we talked about, you know, if you put kindness out into the world, people, the afterlife will help you.
Well, it also makes me think of what I call holler hippies. There's like this very specific group of hippies that exist in the mountains and in the hollers. And there's a lot of like Christian mysticism, and there's a lot of like little weird rituals that have no basis in like any kind of organized religion, but somehow like 5 or 6 women in this holler all do it. Do you know what I mean? Or there are certain rocks that have significance or leaves, and if you find it at your door, it means this, or if it's at your window, it means that kind of stuff. It felt so specific. It felt similar to that. It felt similar to some of the weird traditions that I would see people doing in Appalachia, especially when I was younger, that I notice now and I go, oh, well, that was like, it seemed normal at the time that they would, you know, keep chicken bones and you would bleach them out in the sun. And just my grandfather just had like a ridiculous amount of chicken bones. It was just stupid stuff like that that had such significance to them. And this play and the book feels like that. It feels special and unique. And again, no one else had done it. The only other people who have done anything close to this was, I believe it was Fairmont, did an oral, like an audio book of these stories. But other than that, no one else seemed to think that this was worth that kind of stuff. And that's why I think I came back to do theater here, is that I found that worthy, and I thought audience would find it worthy. And so you have to kind of have the nuts to go, okay, well, let's see if they like it or not. And not only did they like it here, they liked it in a whole other country that definitely has better theater education than we do. So we held our own.
What was that? You're as for lack of a better word, emissary of West Virginia arts, and playing, you know, performing in Scotland, a place not known for ghosts and things like that as well. I mean, how did the, I just feel like lame questions. How did the audience kind of react to these performances? Or?
I mean, we booked it as a theater for young audiences production. So it was mostly children and their families. And so it's an international audience that goes to Edinburgh Fringe. And so they were all very into it. I mean, you know, no one left in a huff or cried, which is like what you're hoping for each time, right? Like no one leaves in a huff and nobody cried unless they're meant to. So I felt like they really responded well. But the thing I kind of connected to the most, my dad and I went the first time. You had to go to like check it out, and then your whole group goes the next time. And my dad has a very clear Appalachian dialect, and he understood everyone who was Scottish, and they understood him perfectly. And it was such an interesting, there was something so interesting about that I thought like, oh, these people are our people. Like we're the same people. And the way that I pitched it to the university, oddly enough, was the splitting of that giant landmass that proved that the Appalachian Mountains were the same as the Scottish Highlands. And I said, listen, these are our people. We're going to go. And that was one of the key points that made people say yes to letting us go over there and do it.
We got to tour different parts of Scotland, and we went to this like park, and I was like, this is just Barboursville Park. Like it really, I mean, it was so similar.
It looks so, I mean, the only difference I would say is that there are no trees on their mountains. They clear cut those 100 billion years ago. But their mountains look exactly like our. I mean, it literally, as soon as we saw it, we were like, oh my God, this is exactly like at home. So it felt like that was also the perfect thing to take to Scotland.
And we were, we spent a few days busking on the street and saying, please come see our show. And they, you know, a lot of people would just, you know, walk by as you do. But some people would be like, okay, what's it about? And we'd say, well, we're from West Virginia. And their first response was, like the song Mountain
Yes.
Mama, and we'd be like, yes, but there's so much
Every
more, and
single
there's
time.
so, I mean, people always know like that's their in, but getting to share stories that I also think were written, there were a few phrases, like the one I keep coming back to is what kind of blameful idea is that?
Yeah.
But a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Like region-specific phrases that
Descriptor,
yeah,
noun,
yeah.
descriptor.
That was just really accurate to
Right?
how we talk.
Do you have any reflections?
I've liked this because I like it. We've talked about it a little bit. It definitely has that West Virginia fatalism, but
Oh,
there's also
yes.
that West Virginia hope in there as well.
Mhm.
It is not like this miserable tale of woe that West Virginia gets made out to be. It is very hopeful. And one of my final things that I had mentioned was the prevalence of abandoned properties.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, like, while I was reading these, because it wasn't like, oh, people moved in. And I
Right.
was thinking, was this the way people in that era were handling the depopulation of West Virginia?
Yeah.
Well, nobody wants to live here because it's a ghost,
hmm
not because of all of the other systematic
Very
issues.
valuable.
Yeah, like, they're like, it's a ghost. Why would we want to leave when
Yes.
it's just that ghost?
Yes.
Like, and I just thought that was one of the things that came through in this, especially in the beginning of the book.
Yeah.
I used to live in downtown Huntington before I moved with a person who I eventually married
Heyo.
to the west side, and I was over a karaoke bar, so it's
Get it.
Sharky's. I lived in these apartments, and for some reason it just felt like there's got to be ghosts here.
Yes.
And I looked on the internet, and it was like nothing bad happened. There are ghosts there. Nothing bad happened here, and they give no one any problems. And just like, well, that's not a very interesting ghost.
Well, that's what I think. Like, I always, growing up, you hear about ghost stories and it's really scary. But truly,
Yeah.
like West Virginia ghosts, the idea is that they're quite friendly and they're, happy to be around.
Yeah.
They just want you to find their body.
Yes.
Yeah.
Bury me.
They just want to be acknowledged.
Yes.
Be reunited. Yeah, I mean, yeah, just care for your. If a local ghost needs some help.
Well,
help
and
them out.
we're in theater, so there's not a single theater you will ever go to where like at least 38 people will be like, there are ghosts here. Let me show you. And you're like, all right. Because I'm not a believer in
Yeah.
that way. Like I get creeped out sometimes, but I'm not like there are ghosts here. Her name is Molly, right? Like I'm not into that kind of
Yeah,
stuff. But being in so many theaters, this also felt super apropos, right?
Sure.
That this didn't seem outside of that's how we also think of theater ghosts, right? We think of theater ghosts as helpful, like they're supposed to help you. Like if you lost your line and you pick it up, like that was a theater ghost, right? If you were almost going to miss an entrance, all of those kinds of things. Why do we leave the ghost light on at night in the theater?
Mhm.
It's so that the ghosts don't want to come on stage. They tend to stay away from the lights.
Do y'all know of any sort of folk collection of theater ghosts?
No. Might be something to think about.
Yeah.
I can introduce you
Somebody
to some
should
people
write
who
that.
work at theater.
I mean, they mentioned how many theaters functioning
Yes.
and not in use, and how many theater ghosts
Or
are in.
converted. There are tons of converted
Yeah.
theaters and then converted. There's a ton of those theaters that were converted to churches and then converted back to theaters. I've worked at 3 separate theaters like that. And so we're just complicating the ghost life because it becomes very crazy when you switch back and forth so many
Mhm.
times.
So, were y'all aware of any ghosts in the Marshall in the Joan C. Edwards?
So I do not know. I'm now sure if you ask like James or Sam, I bet if you ask Deb or Kevin, the staff who have been there for like a very long time, I'm sure that they have some stories. But I will say the ghost light is something all theaters do. That is one of our traditions that when you leave the theater at night, you turn off all lights and you have a single ghost light. It's usually on a little like wheelie cart kind of thing. A single ghost light sits in the center of the stage always. And that is to keep the ghosts out, but it's also so that people don't die when they walk into
Yeah,
a dark theater.
Oh, not the theater, but my afterlife plans is to be the Drinko ghost.
Yeah.
I love the library so
That's
much that I just want to be
exciting.
here.
No,
Yeah.
no, that's neat.
catch
Yeah,
up on
that's
the, on the reading you plan.
That's
you
cool.
hoped to
No
accomplish.
kidding.
Yeah, I think it'll be fun.
Yeah.
I'll throw books at kids.
Yes. I like that.
Yeah, that's my plan.
And you can't like mess with the card catalog anymore. You'd have to just like take down the internet.
It's okay.
You know what I mean?
I'll just go move all the books around.
I just hope whatever. I don't know what constitutes an afterlife, but I just hope I'm not grading during it.
I hope to be haunting my enemies. Eliza. No, I'm just
Be very peaceful.
I'll go sneak Sodexo cookies.
Yes,
Every
or their
event.
chicken tenders.
Hmm.
What? There's crack in those chicken tenders. It's ridiculous.
If you find the honey mustard tipped over empty on the floor, that was me.
yes.
Cool. Well, thank you all very much for joining us and sharing your experiences, and obviously best wishes as you, whatever your future projects are going to be and whatever your future plans. And then congratulations on graduation again, Eliza. And best wishes, Leah, in finishing out the semester.
Well, thank you all so much for having
Thank
us.
you
I
for
very
having
much
us.
appreciate
very much
it.
enjoyed having you all. So thank you very much for checking us out. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to HerdCon Book Chats.